The planet Zareth shone under twin suns, its skies painted with streaks of red and gold. Vast cities of crystal and steel stretched across the surface, symbols of a civilization that had ruled its star system for thousands of years. Yet, despite the beauty and power of the Varathians, a shadow hung over the royal palace. King Thalor sat in his throne room, staring at the flickering holographic map of the neighboring star systems. His brow furrowed. The Varathians had been at war with the Graphics for decades, and the tide was turning against them. Ships were lost in every battle, colonies destroyed, and their people were growing weary. The king's advisors whispered among themselves, their faces pale. "Your Majesty," one said, bowing low, "our fleets cannot hold against the Graphics any longer. We must consider new alliances, or risk extinction." Thalor's eyes narrowed. He had ruled Zareth for 40 cycles, and he had seen many empires rise and fall. Pride and honor guided him, yet now desperation forced his hand. There was one option he had never considered, one that filled him with unease. "My daughter," he murmured, his gaze shifting toward a tall window that overlooked the gardens. There, Princess Lysera walked slowly, her steps hesitant and fragile. Unlike the Varathians around her, Lysera was slight and delicate, her wings small and shimmering faintly. From birth, she had been considered weak, unfit to rule, and a source of worry for the royal family. Thalor sighed deeply. "She is not ready," he said. "The Graphics will crush us, and she cannot defend herself." An advisor spoke again, voice trembling. "Your Majesty, there is a species, humans. They are young, but strong and adaptable. They have fought countless battles and survived impossible odds. Perhaps, Thalor interrupted, his voice sharp. "We could trust a human with my daughter?" The room fell silent. Even the strongest advisors dared not speak. Humans were unknown to the Varathians, strange creatures from a distant star system. Their strength and courage were legendary, but so was their unpredictability. Still, Thalor's mind had made its choice. If Zareth was to survive, he had to act. He would offer a pact. In exchange for an alliance with the humans, he would entrust them with Princess Lysera. The decision was met with shock. The court murmured and whispered behind closed hands. The weak princess, given to a human? They scoffed, unable to understand the king's plan. Many saw it as a disgrace, a humiliation for the royal family. But Thalor ignored them. In her chambers, Lysera felt a strange unease. She had overheard some of the whispers. She knew her father's mind was made up. Humans. She had only heard stories of them. Fierce warriors, clever, unyielding. She shivered at the thought, unsure whether fear or hope filled her heart. When Thalor entered her room, Lysera rose with a faint bow. "Father," she said softly, "why have you come?" He studied her with deep eyes. "Lysera, the time has come. Our people are in danger, and you are not strong enough to lead them alone." She flinched. Even hearing the truth spoken aloud cut deep. I am trying," she said, voice trembling. "I train every day, but my body, my mind, I cannot keep up with the others." Thalor stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are my daughter. You are precious to me, but the galaxy is cruel, and it does not wait for weakness. That is why I must do this." Lysera's eyes widened. "Do what, father?" He took a deep breath. "I have arranged a pact with a human warrior. His name is Captain Daniel Rains. He will take you from Zareth and train you in the ways of his people. They are strong, brave, and different. They may be able to bring out the strength you cannot find in yourself." Lysera's mouth opened, but no words came. Her heart pounded. "A human?" she whispered. You would give me to a stranger?" "Yes," Thalor said firmly, though his eyes softened. "Not as punishment, my daughter, but as a chance. If you remain here, the Grathix will destroy us. If you go with him, perhaps you will survive, perhaps even become something greater than we have ever imagined." The princess sank into a chair, her hands clutching the arms. The thought of leaving everything she had known, her family, her palace, her home, was terrifying. And yet a flicker of hope warmed her chest. Perhaps this human could help her become more than she was. That evening, the royal fleet prepared for departure. Ships shimmered with Varathian crystal energy, engines humming softly in the night. Lysera stood on the launch platform, her heart hammering as she watched Daniel Rain step from his human vessel, the starbound Resolve. He was unlike any creature she had ever seen. Broad-shouldered, strong, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through her fear. Yet there was a calm about him, a quiet confidence that reassured her, though she didn't know why. "Princess Lysera," he said, voice firm but kind. "I have been sent to bring you aboard my ship. You are safe with me. I will not let anything happen to you." Lysera nodded, unable to speak. She climbed aboard the human ship, glancing back at her planet one last time. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, bathing Zareth in a final golden glow. It felt like leaving not only her home, but her past self behind. The ship's engines roared, lifting them into space. Lysera's stomach churned as the planet shrank below them. She felt dizzy, scared, and strangely exhilarated all at once. Daniel noticed her unease. "Space travel is strange at first," he said. "Hold on to the rail. Breathe slowly. It will feel normal soon." She followed his instructions, her fingers gripping the rail. Slowly, the fear began to ebb, replaced by a sense of curiosity. Humans, she realized, approached life differently. They were fearless in ways she had never imagined. Perhaps she thought this human could teach her that same courage. Over the next hours, Daniel introduced her to his crew. They were humans, but unlike any she had read about in her history books. Some were soldiers, trained in combat. Others were engineers, scientists, and medics. Each one moved with purpose, each one carried a quiet strength. They treated her not as a fragile princess, but as a member of their team. Lysera struggled at first. Even walking in the corridors of the ship made her dizzy, and the weight of the human suit she had been given felt suffocating. Yet Daniel never scolded her. Instead, he offered encouragement. "You can do this," he said simply. "One step at a time. Everyone starts somewhere." For the first time in her life, Lysera felt the stirrings of determination. Perhaps she was weak now, but she could change. She wanted to change. Days passed, and Daniel began the first stage of her training. It was not easy. She ran laps through the artificial gravity chambers, lifted weights designed for humans, and practiced basic combat drills. Each failure left her exhausted and frustrated. She wanted to quit more than once. But Daniel reminded her gently, "Strength is not given. It is earned. And every time you fail, you learn something new. That is what makes humans strong." The first time, Lysera believed in the idea of earning strength. She pushed herself further, even when her muscles screamed and her wings ached. Slowly, small victories appeared. A sprint she completed without collapsing. A weapon she handled, without fumbling. At night, she looked out at the stars. Zareth was far below, a small blue-green gem among countless others. She felt fear for the future, but also a strange excitement. She did not know what awaited her, but she knew it would not be easy. And yet, for the first time, she felt capable of facing it. Daniel observed her quietly, sensing the change. She was still weak in many ways, but a spark had ignited in her eyes, a spark of determination, curiosity, and courage. Perhaps she could become more than anyone had expected. Perhaps she could survive. Perhaps one day she could even thrive. And so, the journey began. Princess Lysera, once considered the weak daughter of the Varathian king, had left everything. She knew to travel with a human. Her fate was uncertain, her challenges were many, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The star-bound Resolve sped through the darkness of space, carrying a fragile princess who would, with patience, courage, and determination, become something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The hum of the star-bound Resolve's engines was a constant presence as it traveled through the silent void of space. Princess Lysera, now far from the crystal towers of Zareth, sat quietly in her cabin, staring at the small view screen that showed the endless stars. Each pinprick of light seemed distant yet full of possibility. She felt a mix of fear, confusion, and a strange sense of excitement. Captain Daniel Rains entered her cabin without knocking, as was his habit. Lysera startled, quickly straightening her posture. Daniel, however, did not scold her. Instead, he smiled, though faintly, his eyes sharp and observant. "Are you ready for today?" he asked. Lysera hesitated. I think so," she said softly. Truthfully, she was not sure. Her body still ached from the last day's training, and the exercises had left her feeling weaker than ever. Yet a small flame of determination burned inside her chest. Daniel nodded. "Good. Today we push further. You cannot grow without challenge." For the next few hours, Lysera followed Daniel through a series of drills designed to test her endurance and reflexes. The first was a simple run through the ship's artificial gravity corridor. Her legs trembled with each step, and her wings, though small, struggled to maintain balance. Sweat glistened on her forehead. "You are slowing," Daniel observed, walking alongside her. "Why?" I'm tired," she admitted. Her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. Daniel stopped and faced her. "Strength is not the absence of tiredness, Lysera. Strength is moving forward even when your body says no." Lysera swallowed hard, forcing herself to continue. Step by step she ran, focusing not on the pain but on the rhythm of her movements. For the first time she realized that humans did not see failure as an end. They saw it as a lesson, as a step toward improvement. After the run, Daniel led her to the ship's training deck. Weapons hung on the walls, some human, some alien. Lysera's eyes widened. She had never touched such tools before. "Today you learn to fight," Daniel said. "Not as a princess, not as a weakling. You fight as someone who refuses to be defeated." Lysera picked up a lightweight training staff. At first her grip faltered and she stumbled as she swung it awkwardly. Daniel corrected her stance repeatedly, his hands patient but firm. Hours passed in the haze of effort, and still she stumbled, still she fell. Each failure left her breathless and sore, but Daniel never let her give up. "You are learning," he said finally, as she collapsed to the floor. "Do you know why?" Lysera shook her head, too tired to speak. "Because you are trying. Every time you fail, you learn something. Every time you fall, you rise stronger. That is the human way. That is how we survive in the galaxy." His words sank deep into her heart. For the first time, Lysera began to understand that strength was not something born, but something earned. And though her body was weak, her mind could grow stronger every day. The next lesson was survival. Daniel led her into a simulation chamber designed to mimic extreme environments: blazing deserts, freezing tundras, and zero-gravity voids. Lysera's body was pushed to its limits. She gasped as heat burned her skin in the desert simulation, shivered uncontrollably in the icy tundra, and struggled to maneuver in zero gravity. Yet she endured. And when she thought she could endure no more, Daniel reminded her gently, "You are stronger than you think. Every challenge you face is a chance to become more than you were yesterday." Weeks passed. Lysera's body slowly adapted. Her legs, once weak, grew stronger. Her wings, though small, began to support more weight and movement. Her reflexes sharpened, and her mind learned to anticipate challenges before they arrived. The crew, once wary of her presence, began to notice her growth. At first, they whispered among themselves, doubting she could survive even basic drills. But as days turned into weeks, they saw her pushing herself harder than anyone, enduring pain and fatigue without complaint. "Look at her," whispered one engineer to another. She's Changing. She's becoming more like us. Lysera overheard them but did not react. Inside she felt a quiet pride. It was small, almost fragile, but it was hers. She was no longer just a princess. She was learning to become someone else, someone capable, someone strong, someone who could survive in the galaxy. One evening, as the stars streaked past the windows, Daniel approached her again. "You've made progress," he said simply. "But there is one thing you must understand." Lysera tilted her head, curious. "What is it?" "Strength alone is not enough," he said. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we think, because we care for each other. You will need more than muscle and reflexes. You will need strategy, patience, and courage of the mind." Lysera nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had never thought about courage in that way. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. The next lesson was mental resilience. Daniel placed her in simulated crises where the crew needed her to make decisions under pressure. She had to prioritize tasks, manage resources, and help injured crew members. At first she froze under the stress, unable to decide, but Daniel guided her, teaching her how to stay calm, observe carefully, and act decisively. "Your mind is as important as your body," he said. "A strong mind can turn weakness into power. A weak mind can destroy even the strongest body." Lysera spent hours practicing decision-making, learning to anticipate outcomes and trust her instincts. Slowly, she began to see patterns, to recognize danger before it arrived. She began to understand that human strength was not only physical, but mental and emotional as well. One day, during a particularly intense simulation, the ship was attacked by an enemy fleet. Lysera's training was tested to the limit. She had to lead a small team to repair critical systems while under simulated fire. Sweat poured down her face, her wings ached, and her heart raced, but she refused to stop. By the end of the simulation, she had succeeded. The crew applauded her, not because she had won easily, but because she had refused to give up. Even Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "You are changing," he said. "Not just physically, but in ways that will matter far more. You are learning to survive. You are learning to lead. You are learning what it means to be strong." Lysera felt a sense of pride and hope she had never known. She still had a long way to go, and there were many challenges ahead, but she knew she could face them. She had left the palace of Zareth a weak princess, and now, with every day of training, she was becoming someone new. Yet, not all was easy. There were moments of doubt, when her muscles screamed, when her mind felt overwhelmed, when she longed for the safety of her home. She wondered if she was truly strong enough to survive in a galaxy so full of dangers. Daniel, seeing her struggle, reminded her, "Doubt is normal. Fear is normal. What matters is what you do with it. You can let it stop you, or you can let it drive you forward." Lysera chose to be driven forward. She ran faster, lifted heavier, fought harder, and thought sharper. Each day was a battle, not against enemies but against herself. And slowly she began to win those battles. Months passed, and the change in Lysera became undeniable. She moved with confidence, carried herself with purpose, and spoke with clarity and strength. The crew no longer whispered about the weak princess. Instead, they treated her as an equal, respecting her determination and courage. Even Daniel could see the transformation. She was still small compared to human standards, still delicate compared to Varathian warriors, but her spirit had grown far beyond her body. She was learning the most important lesson of all, that true strength was not born in perfection, but in effort, resilience, and the refusal to surrender. One quiet night, as Lysera gazed out at the endless stars, Daniel joined her. "Do you see that?" he asked, pointing to a distant cluster of stars. Lysera nodded. "Yes. Beautiful. They are many light years away," he said. "But with effort, determination, and courage, you can reach them. You are learning to travel farther than you ever imagined, both in space and within yourself." Lysera smiled faintly. I hope I can someday. You will, Daniel said. You already are. And so the starbound Resolve continued its journey through the galaxy. Lysera, the once weak princess, was no longer the same. She was learning the human way, to endure, to fight, to think, to care, and above all, to grow stronger every day. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers, but for the first time in her life, Lysera felt ready to face them. She had left Zareth a fragile girl. She was becoming something greater, someone who could survive, someone who could lead, someone who could change her destiny. And in the weeks to come, the lessons she had learned aboard the starbound Resolve would be tested like never before. The journey of transformation had begun, and there was no turning back. The weeks of training passed like a storm. For Lysera, every day felt like a struggle, yet every night she could see how she had grown. She was no longer the fragile princess who had boarded the starbound Resolve. Her body was still smaller than most, her wings still delicate, but her heart was stronger. Her eyes carried determination now, and her steps no longer wavered with fear. The crew respected her progress, though they still wondered if she could face real danger. Simulations and drills were one thing, but the galaxy was unforgiving. Out there, mistakes could cost lives. The test came sooner than anyone expected. One quiet morning, alarms blared across the starbound Resolve. The crew rushed through the corridors, boots pounding against the metal floor. Daniel's voice rang out over the ship's intercom. Attention, crew. A distress signal has been received from the human colony on Tralos IV. They are under attack by raiders. Prepare for immediate response. Lysera's heart skipped. A real attack. She had trained for weeks, but she had never seen true battle. Her hands trembled as she strapped on her gear. She remembered Daniel's words. Strength is not the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. The starbound Resolve dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the colony. On the surface below, smoke rose into the atmosphere. Explosions flared across the settlements. Raider ships circled like predators, their weapons firing mercilessly. Daniel stood on the bridge, his face calm, but his eyes sharp. Prepare a landing team. We'll protect the civilians and push back the raiders. Lysera, you're with me. Lysera froze. With you? Yes, Daniel said firmly. You've trained. Now you see what it means to use that training in the real world. You are ready. Was she ready? Fear clutched her chest, but she forced herself to nod. Yes, Captain. Moments later, the landing craft descended through smoke-filled skies, shaking from turbulence. Lysera clutched the straps, her breath shallow. Around her, human soldiers checked their weapons with practiced calm. She envied their confidence, but she also remembered that once they too had been weak and had learned through trial. The craft touched down with a jolt. The hatch opened, and chaos rushed in. Gunfire cracked, explosions shook the ground, and frightened colonists ran for cover. Daniel led the charge, his weapon steady, his voice clear. Form a perimeter, protect the civilians, push the raiders back. Lysera stepped out behind him. The air was thick with smoke. Her eyes stung, and her ears rang from the roar of battle. She wanted to run back inside, but she forced her legs forward. She had chosen this path. She would not turn away. A shout drew her attention. One of the crew had been hit. A soldier lay bleeding on the ground, trapped in the open as raider fire rained down. Without thinking, Lysera sprinted toward him. Her heart pounded, fear screaming at her to stop, but she ignored it. She grabbed the wounded soldier's arm and pulled with all her strength. Blaster shots struck the ground around her, sparks flying. Her lungs burned, her arms ached, but she dragged him inch by inch toward safety. Cover her! Daniel shouted. The crew fired suppressive shots, giving Lysera the chance to reach the barricade. She collapsed beside the injured man, gasping for breath. Medic! She cried. The crew's medic rushed forward, quickly tending to the soldier. Daniel appeared beside her, his face unreadable. You did well, he said simply. You faced fear and acted anyway. That is courage. Lysera's chest swelled with pride, though fear still lingered inside her. She had done something she never believed possible. She had saved someone in the middle of battle. The fight raged on. The raiders were relentless, their ships dropping more soldiers into the settlement. Daniel organized the defense with precision, his voice guiding the crew and colonists alike. Lysera stayed by his side, helping where she could. She carried supplies, guided civilians to safety, and even fired a training weapon at the enemy when needed. Her hands shook every time she pulled the trigger, but each shot reminded her that she was no longer helpless. Hours passed like minutes. The colony burned, but the defenders held strong. Finally, the raiders began to retreat, their ships lifting off into the sky. Cheers erupted from the colonists as the danger passed. Lysera stood among the humans, her body trembling with exhaustion, her heart still racing. She looked at her hands, dirty, bruised, but steady. She had faced battle and survived. More than that, she had helped. As the crew gathered, Daniel addressed them. Today we protected the innocent. We stood against those who sought to destroy. Each of you fought bravely, and none of it would have been possible without courage. His eyes turned to Lysera. And today our princess showed that courage is not bound by strength or training. Courage comes from choice. The crew cheered, clapping Lysera on the back. She blushed, unused to such recognition, but a small smile touched her lips. She was no longer the fragile figure hidden in the palace. She was something more. That night, as the crew rested, Lysera sat alone under the stars of Trelos 4. The smoke had cleared, leaving the sky bright with constellations. She thought about the day, the fear, the pain, the moments when she wanted to run. Yet she had stayed. She had acted. Daniel joined her, sitting quietly beside her. "You did well today," he said. Lysera looked down. "I was afraid. I thought I would fail. I thought I would die." "Fear is natural," Daniel said. "Every soldier feels it. The difference is whether you let it control you. Today, you didn't." Lysera nodded slowly. I saved someone. I thought I couldn't, but I did." Daniel's voice softened. "And that is the beginning of your transformation. You are stronger than you think, Lysera. Much stronger." She looked at him, her eyes shining with quiet determination. "I want to keep learning. I want to be more. I don't want to be weak anymore." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then you will be more. Every day you will grow. You are already proving it." For the first time, Lysera believed his words. She had seen herself act with courage, and she had seen how humans trusted each other, fought for each other, and never gave up. Perhaps she could become like them, someone who did not bow to weakness but rose above it. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding. Lysera worked alongside the colonists and crew, helping repair homes and carry supplies. She was sore, tired, and dirty, but she did not complain. She felt pride in the work, pride in being useful. The colonists whispered about her, the alien princess who had fought with humans, who had dragged a wounded soldier to safety. Rumors spread quickly, reaching even the stars. Back on Zareth, word reached King Thalor. His advisors reported with disbelief. "Your daughter fought beside humans. She faced raiders and saved lives. The colony calls her a hero." The king listened silently, his heart conflicted. He had given his daughter away because he believed she was too weak to survive. Now she was proving him wrong. Perhaps he had made the right choice after all. But others in the royal court were uneasy. "If she grows stronger," they whispered, "she may threaten the balance of power. She may change the very future of our people." Lysera knew nothing of these whispers. For her, the galaxy was no longer a distant, frightening place. It was alive, full of dangers, but also full of hope. She was no longer just surviving. She was learning to live, to fight, to stand. And deep inside her, something stirred. Her body, pushed beyond its limits, was beginning to awaken hidden strengths long dormant in her race. Her senses sharpened, her endurance grew, and her once delicate frame carried resilience it never had before. She did not yet understand what was happening, but she could feel the change. The trial by fire had begun her true transformation. The weak princess of Zareth was no more. In her place was someone new, someone who could stand among humans and be counted as one of them. And soon the galaxy would see just how far that transformation could go. The colony on Trelos IV was safe again, but the memory of fire and smoke stayed with Lysera. She replayed the moment she dragged the wounded soldier through enemy fire, remembering the weight in her arms, the fear pounding in her chest, and the strength she hadn't believed she possessed. Something had shifted inside her that day, something she could not yet explain. Back aboard the starbound Resolve, training continued as usual, yet Lysera felt different. Her body moved with more ease, her muscles recovering faster than before. She no longer collapsed after long runs, instead she pushed herself further. Weapons that once felt heavy now sat firmly in her hands. Even her senses sharpened. She noticed sounds in the corridors others missed, the faint hum of engines or the distant clatter of tools. Daniel observed quietly. He was not quick to praise, but his eyes followed her carefully. One morning after she had finished a drill faster than the human soldiers, he spoke. "You've changed," he said, folding his arms. Lysera wiped the sweat from her brow, her chest heaving. "Changed?" "Yes," Daniel replied. "Your body is adapting, but it's more than that. There is something in you, something awakening." She frowned, confused. "I do not understand." "You will," he said simply, leaving her with more questions than answers. Shadows on Zareth far away, in the glittering palace of Zareth, news of Lysera's actions spread through the royal court. Whispers filled the great halls. The weak princess had fought beside humans. She had faced raiders, saved lives, and earned respect. Some nobles laughed in disbelief, while others grew nervous. "If she grows stronger," one whispered, "she could change the line of succession." King Thalor sat in silence, listening. His heart carried both pride and worry. He remembered the fragile child who had stumbled even when walking through the palace gardens. Now she was becoming something he had never imagined. "Perhaps the humans have done what we could not," he murmured. But not all shared his feelings. Rival houses who had long wanted Lysera out of the way began plotting. If the princess truly was growing stronger, she could become a threat to their influence. And so, seeds of unrest were sown in the shadows of Zareth. The test of endurance back on the starbound Resolve, Lysera's training took her to new limits. Daniel introduced her to the endurance course, a grueling obstacle path inside the ship's cargo bay. Human soldiers struggled to finish it. When Lysera attempted it the first time, she fell hard, bruises marking her skin. "Again," Daniel said calmly. She groaned, but she rose and tried again. Each failure hurt, but each time she learned how to balance, how to climb faster, how to focus her mind on one step at a time. Days passed, and she improved. Soon, she was completing the course in times that rivaled the crew. Her wings, though small, gave her slight advantages in jumps and maneuvers. What once had been her weakness was slowly turning into strength. When she finished the course one evening, gasping for breath but smiling, the crew cheered. Lysera felt pride, not because she was perfect, but because she had proved to herself. That weakness did not define her. Strange power, yet something unusual began happening. During sparring, Lysera's strikes grew faster than before. In zero-gravity drills, she maneuvered with uncanny precision. In moments of danger, her instincts flared sharper than human reflexes. One evening, while practicing hand-to-hand combat with Daniel, she managed to disarm him with a sudden burst of strength. Both froze in surprise. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't normal." Lysera stared at her hands, trembling slightly. I didn't mean to. It just happened." Daniel studied her closely. "Your people may carry potential even they don't understand. The training, the danger, it's unlocking something inside you." Lysera's mind raced. All her life, she had been weak, fragile, the shame of the palace. Could it be that hidden inside her was a power waiting to be awakened? Crisis in the void. Her newfound abilities were tested sooner than expected. While patrolling near a trade route, the Starbound, Resolve received a distress call. A civilian freighter was under attack by pirates. Without hesitation, Daniel ordered the ship toward the signal. As they approached, the freighter appeared badly damaged, its hull torn apart. Pirate ships swarmed around it like vultures. Battle. Stations, Daniel commanded. The Resolve fired, scattering the pirates, but several managed to board the freighter. A landing team was sent in, with Daniel and Lysera among them. Inside, chaos reigned. Fires burned, civilians screamed, and pirates looted without mercy. Lysera followed Daniel, her heart racing, yet her steps steady. A pirate lunged at her, weapon raised. Instinct took over. In a blur, Lysera sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and twisted with strength she hadn't realized she had. The pirate fell with a cry, disarmed in seconds. The civilians gasped, staring at her with wide eyes. Daniel glanced at her too, his face unreadable, but inside he knew. Lysera was becoming something far more than expected. Together, the team secured the freighter and drove the pirates away. Not a single civilian life was lost, thanks in part to Lysera's quick reflexes and strange new strength. The crew's respect. That night, back on the Resolve, the crew gathered in the mess hall. Soldiers and engineers alike spoke of Lysera's actions. "She fought like one of us," said a soldier. "She saved 3 civilians," said another. "She isn't weak at all," a mechanic added. Lysera sat quietly, embarrassed but proud. She had not fought for recognition, but hearing their respect warmed her heart. For so long she had been mocked as fragile and unfit. Now people were beginning to see her differently. Daniel raised a glass. "To Princess Lysera," he said. "Not the weak daughter of Zareth, but a warrior of the Resolve." The crew cheered, and Lysera felt tears prick her eyes. She had never been praised like this before. Dreams of the future later, alone in her cabin, Lysera stared at her reflection. Her body was still slender, her wings still delicate, but her eyes were different. They carried strength, courage, and something new, confidence. She whispered to herself, "I am not weak anymore." But her heart also felt heavy. If she had changed so much here, what would her people think when she returned? Would they see her as a stranger? Or could she use this strength to protect them, to change their future? Sleep took her, and her dreams were filled with visions of fire, war, and a throne surrounded by both humans and Vorathians. She saw herself standing tall, not as a fragile princess, but as a leader. Storm on Zareth, back on Zareth, unrest grew. Rival houses conspired, fearing that Lysera's rising reputation would threaten their power. Some whispered of betrayal, others of war. King Thalor sat in council listening to their arguments. "She is not fit to rule," one noble shouted. "She is becoming dangerous," another added. But Thalor only said, "She is my daughter, and if she is growing stronger, perhaps it is the destiny of our people to change with her." His words silenced the chamber, but the seeds of rebellion continued to grow in secret. The captain's warning back on the Resolve, Daniel found Lysera on the observation deck, staring at the stars. "You've grown," he said quietly. Lysera smiled faintly. "Thanks to you, thanks to your people. I never knew I could be like this." Daniel shook his head. "It isn't thanks to me. It's thanks to you. You chose to fight. You chose to endure. That's why you've changed." Her smile faded. "But is it enough? If I return to Zareth, will I be strong enough to lead my people? Or will they see me as nothing more than the weak princess they remember?" Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Strength is not enough to lead. You must also learn compassion, wisdom, and sacrifice. A leader is not the strongest fighter, but the one who carries the weight of others. That will be your greatest challenge." Lysera nodded, the words sinking deep into her heart. She was not finished. Her journey was far from over. The awakening in. The weeks that followed, Lysera's abilities grew further. Her endurance surpassed even some of the human soldiers. Her reflexes saved lives more than once, and deep inside she felt something stirring, an ancient power tied to her very bloodline. Perhaps the Varathians were not as limited as they believed. Perhaps weakness was not her destiny after all. Perhaps she had been born with the potential to become something greater, something her people had forgotten. The weak princess was gone. In her place was someone new, a warrior, a leader in the making, and a symbol of hope, not only for her people, but for the humans who had welcomed her. The galaxy was watching, and soon it would know her name. The stars above Zareth burned brighter than Lysera remembered. As the starbound resolve approached her homeworld, she felt her heart pound in her chest. She had left this planet as a weak and fragile princess, mocked by nobles and pitied by her father. Now she returned as someone different, stronger, braver, no longer afraid to face the galaxy. But she knew this homecoming would not be peaceful. Rumors had already reached the resolve. Rival houses were plotting, armies were moving, and war was close at hand. Daniel stood beside her at the viewing deck, his eyes calm but sharp. "This won't be easy," he said. Lysera nodded. It never was. A troubled homecoming. The ship descended into the royal landing bay. Soldiers and nobles awaited, their faces filled with suspicion. King Thalor himself stood at the front, his robes heavy with gold, his crown shining under the lights. When Lysera stepped down the ramp, silence filled the hall. Every eye was fixed on her. She walked with firm steps, her head high, her posture no longer that of a timid child but of a warrior who had seen battle. Her father's eyes widened. He had expected change, but not this. Before him stood a daughter transformed, strong, confident, carrying herself with a power that demanded respect. "Lysera," King Thalor said softly, his voice trembling. "Father," she replied, bowing, slightly, but the silence broke as nobles began to whisper. "Look at her. Is this truly the weak princess? She stands like a soldier, or perhaps a threat." King Thalor silenced them with a raise of his hand, yet deep down even he knew their whispers carried danger. The first challenge that evening, Lysera attended the council. The grand chamber glittered with jewels, but tension hung in the air like a storm. The noble lords argued loudly, accusing each other of betrayal. "She is unfit to rule," one shouted, pointing at Lysera. "She is no longer of our people," another sneered. "The humans have changed her. She is one of them now." Lysera felt the heat rise in her chest, but she remembered Daniel's words. A leader does not fight for herself but for others. She stood tall and spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I am still Lysera of Zareth," she said, "but I am no longer weak. I have seen war. I have trained. I have fought beside humans who showed me what strength truly means. Our enemies do not care if I am human or Varathian. They care only if we stand divided or united." Her words silenced the chamber for a moment. Even her fiercest critics could not deny the strength in her voice. But the seed of rebellion had already grown too deep. The council ended in anger, and that night, word spread across Zareth. Civil war was near. Whispers of rebellion. Lysera did not rest. She trained with the palace guards, showing them human drills and tactics. At first they resisted, laughing at the idea of following a princess. But when she outlasted them in endurance, when she disarmed a captain twice her size, their laughter faded. Slowly, respect grew. Daniel watched from the side, a faint smile on his lips. "You're winning them, one soldier at a time," he said. But shadows moved in the city. Rival lords gathered armies. One, Lord Kalar, declared Lysera a traitor, claiming she planned to hand Zareth to the humans. His soldiers marched toward the capital, banners of rebellion flying high. War had come. The battle for Zareth. The clash began at dawn. The city of Zareth shook with thunder as Lord Kalar's forces stormed the outer defenses. Fire lit the skies, and the sound of war drums echoed through the streets. King Thalor rallied his armies, but doubt filled the ranks. Many soldiers feared the rebels' numbers. The king looked at his daughter. This may be our last stand, he whispered. Lysera shook her head firmly. Not our last, our beginning. She stood before the troops, her armor gleaming under the rising sun. Her voice rang out clear and strong. Warriors of Zareth. For years I was called weak, but weakness was only a chain placed upon me. I broke that chain, and you can too. Today we do not fight as lords and houses. We fight as one people, for our world, for our families, for our future. Stand with me and we will not fall. The soldiers roared, their fear burning into courage. Daniel stepped forward beside her. Humans will fight with you. You are not alone. The princess leads. The battle raged through the streets. Lysera fought at the front, her blade flashing, her wings carrying her across rooftops as she struck down rebels with speed and precision. Her endurance shocked even veteran warriors. While others tired, she pressed forward. When soldiers faltered, she lifted them up. Her courage spread like fire, pushing back the rebels. Daniel fought beside her, covering her flank, his eyes never leaving her. In every clash, he saw not the fragile princess he had first met, but a warrior born from hardship and fire. The duel at the heart of the city, Lysera finally faced Lord Kalor himself. He was tall, armored in black steel, his eyes burning with hatred. You should have stayed weak, he spat. You shame our kind by standing with humans. Lysera raised her blade, her voice steady. No, I honor our kind by becoming more than what we were. Strength is not shame, division is. They clashed in a storm of steel. Kalor was powerful, his strikes heavy, but Lysera was faster. She dodged, countered, and endured. Every lesson Daniel had taught her, every moment of pain and training, guided her now. At last, Kalor overextended. With one swift movement, Lysera disarmed him, her blade at his throat. The rebels froze, watching. Lysera lowered her weapon. Yield and live, fight and fall. Her mercy stunned them. One by one, the rebels dropped their weapons. The battle was over. The Iron Star of Zareth. When the dust cleared, the people of Zareth gathered in the great square. King Thalor stood before them, his voice heavy with emotion. My daughter was once weak, but through struggle she found strength. Through strength she found wisdom. Today she has not only defended our world, she has united us. From this day forward, she shall be known not as the fragile princess, but as the Iron Star of Zareth. The crowd erupted in cheers, voices rising like thunder. Lysera stood tall, her heart swelling. For the first time, she was not ashamed of who she was. She had become the leader her people needed. A new path. That night, as the fires of war died down, Lysera stood on the palace balcony. The city lights stretched far, peaceful once more. Daniel joined her, silent for a moment before speaking. You did it, he said softly. Lysera smiled faintly. No, we did it. Without you, without your people, I would never have found this strength. Daniel shook his head. You always had it. Humanity only showed you how to bring it out. She turned toward him, her eyes bright with determination. Then I will do the same for my people. If weakness is only a chain, I will break those chains for all of Zareth. I will lead them to a future where we are no longer divided, where we stand strong together. Daniel placed a hand over his chest in respect. Then you will be a greater ruler than any before you. The legacy begins from that day. Lysera was no longer seen as the weak daughter. She became a symbol of unity between humans and Varathians, a warrior and a leader whose story spread across the stars. The galaxy whispered her new name with awe, the Iron Star. Her journey was far from over, but one truth was clear. The alien, princess who had once been given away in despair, had been transformed into a legend.